I can see your screen now. Prasad.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandbox Accelerator Program, or we call it Tableau Buddy Sandbox. It's one of the initiatives that we started this year, and we selected some of the great mentees over here. And with the help of our mentors, as well as our guest lecturers, one of us is Dennis, who recently joined us, and he's also part of the family. And just to give you a sneak peek on the team again. So forget about the top two guys on the top. So they don't do much actually. Then we have the superstars. We have Steve, we have Jyoti, Louis, Idris, and Adrian. These are actually the superstars who made this happen. We are almost at the end of the first cohort. That's what we would like to call it. And we are going to go ahead with one of the most interesting sessions, though every one of them was interesting. Here we have Shreya. Thank you so much for doing this with us and sharing your time with us, Shreya. Shreya is a Tableau visionary, a public ambassador, and a Tableau Alteryx consultant at the Information Lab UK. And she co-leads what is happening. And she co-leads Back to His Basics initiative. And today she is going to share her knowledge on designing backgrounds using Figma. I think Shreya started her journey with Tableau and the DataFam community around 2 years ago. And if you haven't had a chance to look at her portfolio, I'm just kidding. You must have for sure. She has her own style and very soothing color templates she uses always, and it's really nice. You should take a look if you are going through the video we have just published. This is just for when we are going to publish, okay? So here we are. Thank you so much, Shreya, again, for doing this with us, and I'll hand it over to you. You can also talk about some of the interesting facts about what you do apart from Tableau.
Thank you, Ruslan. That was a lovely intro. Let me share my slides. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen now.
Yes.
Brilliant. And we have that lovely stop sharing option. So hi everyone. Big thank you to the Tableau Buddy Sandbox team for inviting me here today. I'm really excited to join you all and to share a bit about how you can design backgrounds in Figma. So, before we get started, I wanted to share a little bit more about me in case you haven't met me before. So hi everyone, I'm Shreya. I'm a first-time Tableau visionary, which is really cool, still very surreal. I'm also a Tableau public ambassador. I've received 10 of the days in Tableau Public. At the 2024 Tableau Conference, I also won the Kelly Martin Best Designer Vizzy Award, which was very surreal too. And like Prasanth said, I co-lead the Back to His Basics initiative. So Back to His Basics is great for beginners. We post challenges on a bi-weekly basis, and it helps you focus on one topic or technique at a time and grow your Tableau skills. So I co-lead this alongside Eric Balash and Victory, who joined us very recently. So if you haven't heard of it and you'd like to give it a go, definitely check it out. And I've been using Tableau for about 2 years, 9 months, so just a bit over 2 years now. And I'm very grateful I get to do this in my day-to-day. I think it's such a cool job working with Tableau, and I'm sure you guys all love it too, since you're part of the Sandbox community. So today, we're going to start by looking at what is Figma, and I'm going to introduce you to Figma and the benefits of creating your own custom backgrounds. We'll then look at the typical design flow process, and I'll familiarize you with the interface of Figma. And to finish off, we'll design a background together in Figma so you can try it out yourself. Oh, am I not sharing my screen?
Yeah, I was just about to say, because you were supposed to click on the hide the sharing window, right? And you click stop sharing, but I thought that you wanted to show your face instead of a PowerPoint in the beginning, right?
I'm sorry, that's my bad. I meant to click hide, not stop sharing. But this is what we'll be focusing on for this session. So what is Figma? Well, Figma is the free browser-based design tool. It does have a desktop version, but there's no difference in its functionality, and I personally just prefer using the browser version. It's widely used for UI UX web design. It has a user-friendly interface and is fairly easy for beginners to grasp. But for us, it's also a great tool to design backgrounds for our Tableau dashboards and create high-fidelity wireframes in. But why might we be interested in creating these custom backgrounds for our visitors? So the first reason is it can make your work more visually attractive. So Figma has a lot of design functionality that's not native in Tableau, such as rounded corners, which is coming soon, I believe, shadows, layer blurs, gradients, and more. And these can all really enhance the visual aspect of our work. It's also a great way to ensure that your viz layout has enough white space and looks aligned. I know for beginners in Tableau, playing around with padding and white space, it can be quite difficult. So this is a nice way to kind of introduce that design aspect to your work and make it look more visually pleasing once again. And lastly, you can incorporate assets that are more aligned to your brand and your goal. So it's really good for branding and aligning it to your clients' needs. So speaking of clients, next you might be wondering, is it okay to use custom backgrounds with clients? Is it best practice? And I would say it really depends on what your client's looking for. So I've worked with teams that prefer to do everything natively in Tableau. And I've also worked with teams that specifically have asked me to create dashboard templates or background templates using Figma. And since you're adding a background image to your Tableau workbook, it doesn't have a significant impact on the performance. So when I can, I love to use Figma in my work, as it usually impresses stakeholders and it's nice to make a positive impression early on. Now, let's briefly take a look at the basic steps involved for creating a custom background in Figma. So there are 5 main steps, but you can spend as much time as you'd like on stages 2 and 3. So the first stage is to create a base. Then on top of that base, we would start overlaying shapes, perhaps for our filter panels or perhaps for dashboard pills. Then you can increase the visual interest. So you can add those shadows, you can add those gradients or images. Finally, once you're happy with your design, you can group everything and export it out. And then finally, you can bring it in as an image into Tableau. So now that you've got a better idea of what Figma is and how we can use it, let's look at what the interface looks like. So this is the homepage for Figma. This is the first screen you'll see when you log in, and it will open up to show you the recent projects that you've worked on here. Just below the recent projects, we have a tab called Templates and Tools. So this lets you browse resources that are already pre-made, for example, dashboard wireframes. So you can dive in and look at other people's work and how they've laid out their Figma files. At the top, you can create new files. So the first option is a design file, and this is what we'd be using to create our backgrounds. But Figma also has a lot more functionality than this. So the next option is to create a Fig Jam, which is almost like a whiteboard. So you can collaborate with your team and almost like brainstorm ideas. It also has an option to create really great slides. So if you wanted to create a presentation, you can click on the slides option. And lastly, if you wanted to create more marketing assets for your brand or for your company, then you can click on Buzz. So it has a lot more functionality than you might expect. And for each of the projects that you've worked on, you can tell by the project icon what kind of file it is. So here we can see that's a Fig Jam file based on the icon. But since we'll be creating our custom backgrounds and design files, when you click on design file, this is the interface that you'd see. So on the left-hand panel, you have the design file name, and you can easily change these by double-clicking on the title. Below that, you can add pages. So pages is almost like a fresh new sheet where you can add ideas. In the free version of Figma, you can have a max of 3 pages. After that, you'd have to start paying. But I've found that 3 pages is it's more than enough, really. And if you did want more pages, you can just open up a new design file. There's no limits on that. Then you have the main canvas. So on the canvas, you'd drag and drop your shapes, you'd add your base. So this is where you'd be creating your background. At the bottom, you have the objects and tools bar. So here you can add shapes, you can add on text, you can draw lines if you'd like. So this is where you'd really be bringing stuff onto the canvas. And on the right-hand side, you can customize the canvas color. So this won't affect your design. This is just for your own personal clarity. So let's say you're creating a very light mode design. Maybe the gray, you wouldn't be able to see the objects very clearly on a gray background. So you might want to make it darker, just so you can see the objects that you're placing on the canvas. So this is just personal preference. But once we bring on a shape or an object onto the canvas, the right-hand side pane is a bit more customized. So on the right-hand side pane, once you've selected one of your shapes or objects, you can customize the position, so the X and Y coordinates. You can also change the height and width of that object. You can increase the corner roundness, so if you want rounded corners, this is where you do it as well. And you can also customize the fill color. So you can add images, you can add gradients. This is where you'd really increase the visual interest. And then finally, once you're happy, you can export the images out of Figma. So I think the best way to learn how to create backgrounds is by following a walkthrough. At least that's how I learn best. So I've created 2 designs that we can learn together, and hopefully it'll give you a rough idea of how to use Figma and how you can incorporate it into your Tableau designs. So Prasanna, I think I emailed you 2 files. Would you be able to put it in their Slack channel, please? And if you guys don't already have a free Figma account, it would be great if you could sign up, but if you don't have time to sign up, feel free to just watch along, and you can always rewatch the recording and go through the steps at your own pace. So don't worry if you don't have an account already. If you do, please open up Figma and we will go through the walkthrough together.
Yeah, the files, 2 files should already be in the Sandbox Slack for those of you who have access. So I guess there's 1 picture and 1 Figma file, right?
Yes. So could people just let me know in the chat once they're ready, or if they need a few more moments to get into Figma? Okay, we've got a few readies. You're always ready.
He was born ready.
He was born ready. Great. I'll wait for a few more people to say, oh, I've got some thumbs up, which is great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to load in that Figma file into your own Figma account so we can get started with the walkthrough. More readies? That's what we love to hear. Great. In that case, let's get started. So we'll be listening on my way home. Oh, well, thank you for joining anyway. Okay, so once you've logged into Figma, this should be the main screen you see. We're going to load in the Figma file I gave you. So to do this, we are going to, oh, I have to remember how I did this as well. Oh, God.
I think she's just exited accidentally.
Wondering what means oh god.
Well, it's funny because she pressed the button and it still actually let her say, "Oh God," but she'll be back.
Oh, maybe by mistake, instead of delete or just shut down your laptop or something.
Is she stuck? Yeah, I think so.
I think she'll be back in like 2 minutes. Yeah.
I can see she's still there on the call. I think some network issue.
Let's see who will be the first to figure out how to upload the file before she's back. I'm trying my best, but
I think
I've
the
already
easiest way
done
is
it
just
already.
drag and drop. Yeah, usually works.
let's try. Importing two drafts.
Yeah.
Figma Mo.
Her laptop died actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got it. How to import.
That's a good, excellent timing. Yeah, but as you said, Adrian, just drag and drop and you get those files in. And there's an import option as well. Yeah, there's an import. This arrow with or a box with an arrow on top right corner.
Yes.
So we don't need her, right? We know how to do it. We can just drag and drop.
This is being recorded, guys.
Yeah, but now you have to unmute yourself as well.
Oh God, am I back?
Welcome
You're
back.
back, Shreya. What on earth?
You made it.
What did we do to make you run away?
Always when you're gonna do a demo, right? At least we're back. Okay, I'm gonna pick off just where we left off.
And remember, click the hide button, not the stop sharing button.
Oh yes, thank you. We're back. Okay, so let's bring in that Figma file that I gave you into Figma. So to do that, on the top bar where we have design, FigJam, slides, buzz, site, we have an option that says import. So we're going to click on that. And then we're going to import from computer and load in that Figma file. And then press done. And that should open up one of the projects for you. So it's imported in that project. And we can just double click and open it up. So this is the first example we're going to go through. And for this one, I wanted to showcase how you can create glass morphism effects. So glass morphism is a very popular and modern design style, and it almost makes it look like you've added a layer of frosted glass over an image. So this is what we're going to create from scratch. So at the bottom tool, glass morphism. Actually, if I go to my slide, I think I wrote it there. I hope I wrote it there. Yeah, so it's spelled like that, glass morphism. So let's get started. At the bottom toolbar, where you see that rectangle, we're going to click on that rectangle and then click anywhere on our canvas. So that should bring up a square. Now, since the square is selected, on the right-hand side, we're going to change our width and height settings. So typically when you're creating backgrounds in Figma, you'd want to match the width and height settings so it matches your Tableau dashboard layout size. So in this case, we're going to change it to 1,200 for width. And then for height, I'm going to change it to 700 pixels. And currently it's off my screen, but I can always drag it to the center and move my screen down. Another thing you can do if it's off your screen is on the right-hand layout pane where it says the percentage on the upper right corner, you can also click zoom to fit. So this will bring all of the elements on your view into one view. Great. Now we want to add in the custom image so it fills up the space. So on the right-hand pane, where we have fill, we're going to click on that. And this is where we can add in those visual elements, such as a gradient, if we click on the option next to it. We can also add in a pattern, if we wanted. You can also add in an image, which is what we're going to do. And if you wanted to, if you have the paid version of Figma, you can add in a video. So we're going to go back to the image option. And where it says upload from computer, upload the second image that was in your Slack channel. So for this, I'm going to double click on that. And already that looks pretty cool, I think. So this is an image I took from Unsplash. So it's free to use in your dashboards. You can always attribute or credit the person that created the image as well. But if you're ever looking for cool visuals for your dashboards, unsplash.com is a great resource. Next, we're going to click on the rectangle option again at the bottom toolbar. Click anywhere over that image so you get your square. And this time we're just going to manually resize this square so it becomes a rectangle. And so it sits somewhere in the middle of our image. I'm going to zoom in a bit closer so you can see what I'm doing. Now, this has created just a normal rectangle. What if we wanted to give it rounded corners? To do that, I'm going to click on the rectangle again. And then under appearance on the right-hand side, we have this corner radius option. So I can manually adjust this to 20, for example, and you can see it's made the corners of that rectangle more rounded. But you can also, if you hover over the icon, manually drag back and forth to increase that corner radius. Next, I'm going to change the fill setting. And I'm going to give it a white color. So just drag it to the upper left corner. And the percentage right next to the hex code, so FFFFF, shows the opacity. So if I want to make this more transparent, I can hover over that percentage symbol and drag it down to whatever opacity feels right. But for this example, I'm going to change this value to 1% and press enter. So when I click off, you can't really see anything at the moment, but that's okay. We can still select that rectangle 22 layer from the left-hand panel. So I'm going to reselect that rectangle 22 layer. And this time under effects, I'm going to open up this effects folder. So add an effect. It's automatically added a drop shadow. So this is what Figma defaults to when you add an effect. But we're going to change this drop shadow to a background blur. Currently doesn't look any different, does it? But where we have the blur option, and it's set to 4, I'm going to increase this so it's a lot bigger. And can you see how it's blurring out that background? So I'm going to change, feel free to play around with whatever value you'd like. I'm going to set it to maybe 70. So already that's looking more frosty like glass. And the last thing I'm going to do is add a stroke. So currently when I click off, the edges of that new rectangle I've added isn't very defined. So I'm going to re-click on that rectangle and add a stroke. I'm going to keep the width of that stroke line as 1. I'm going to set the color to white. And I'm going to reduce the opacity slightly. So maybe 35. And that finishes the glass morphism effect. So even just like this, you could easily like add charts in Tableau over this, and it's added a bit more visual design to your biz. What if we wanted to add some text? From the bottom toolbar, I can click the text option, which is the giant T, and then click anywhere on my canvas. And I can write the words, "Welcome to my dashboard." Now, currently it's very small. So if I Control A, it selects my entire text that I've written out. And then under typography, oh, there we go. I can change the font size to maybe 36. And if I wanted to, I can even change the font to any sans option. So if you type in sans, you can see how many fonts Figma actually has. So in Tableau, you're limited with the number of fonts or the type of fonts that you can use. So if you did want to use a more customized font, I'm going to actually just change it to Albert Sans, but feel free to pick any sans font. In Tableau, let's say you wanted to use a more custom font. It might not render correctly when you upload it to Tableau Public or to your Tableau server site unless you've downloaded it directly onto it. While it's not our best practice to export text as images, in certain cases you might want to do it, as long as you're aware that it's not very accessible for users who are using screen readers, for example. As long as you're aware of the limitations, it's nice to know that you can do this. Great, and let's say we wanted to add an Enter Now button. Once again, we're going to select our rectangle shape. So just to show you the shape tools that you have, if you click on the arrow next to shape tools, these are the shapes that are available in Figma from scratch. I find rectangle is very versatile. You can use it for most things. So once again, we're going to click on the rectangle option, click anywhere on your canvas so you get that square. And we're going to resize it so it looks like a button. So maybe I want my button to be around that size, but I want it to look like a pill. So once again, in the right-hand side, where we have appearance and our corner radius, we can increase that to, I think 50 is even fine. You can increase that. And can you see how it's created a pill for you? So I'm going to click on that pill, give it a bright white color. And if I wanted, I can even add a drop shadow to this. So by clicking on that rectangle again, we can head to Effects, click on the plus, and it's automatically added that drop shadow. But if we want to change the position of that shadow, we can drag and adjust that X and Y value, maybe increase the blur and change the color of the shadow, maybe something dark blue so it matches the background. And just like that, you created your pill. And lastly, if we wanted to add an Enter Now text, I can go to my bottom toolbar, click on the text option, click anywhere on my canvas and write Enter Now. I can reduce the size of that text by selecting all of it. So Control A, select the entire text. Change the font size so it's slightly smaller and fits inside that pill. And if I want to give it that cool spaced out look, we can change the kerning or the letter spacing. So just under the font size, we can adjust the letter spacing and we can make it really wide or really close together. So I'm just going to make it slightly wider. Maybe make the text slightly smaller as well. But just like that, we've created the background above. Now, let's say we wanted to export this as an image. This is where the group and export step would come in. So I could select everything on my canvas, so that entire image, right-click, and then group selection. So currently it's called Group 1. I could give this a better name and call it glass morphism, or Image 1, or whatever you'd like to call it. And then to export this out, if I scroll down on the right-hand toolbar, at the bottom we have an option called Export. So we can expand this by clicking on the plus. And if I click on the drop-down where it says PNG, these are all of the export file types that we can export this as. Now, when I'm exporting out images, I always tend to go for PNG. And that's because SVG doesn't always retain those visual effects like the shadows or the blurs that you're adding in. So PNG is usually a safe bet, but SVGs are compatible with Tableau as well. But we're going to just save it as a PNG and click export the file name.
Could I just, I'm glanced away for 2 seconds. So I'm almost as old as Steve here. So where's the group thing? I didn't see where.
Okay. So once you select everything on your view.
Sorry, Shreya, can you also talk a bit louder for Tor as well?
So once you've selected everything on your view, you can right click, and then there should be an option that says group selection.
Perfect. Thank you.
So we can click on that. And if you wanted to rename the group selection on the left-hand panel, you can just double click and give it any name you'd like. So as I'm sure you know, with building dashboards, it's always good practice to label the layers or the containers that you're using. Same practice with this. Admittedly, I don't always follow that and then I regret it later down the line. But it's nice to know that you can do that. And then finally, you can select that entire group on the left-hand pane. Scroll down on the right-hand pane and export glass morphism. And then you can save it into your downloads folder. And if I open up this glass morphism PNG, you can see we've created that background. So we can easily just import this as an image into Tableau. Prasanth, did you have a question?
Yes. So generally what I've seen is, let's say you have actually you've used the same layout size and then you're building it with the same size as well. Though when you're using it in Tableau and then you're publishing it, I would say the pixel, it's not that, I would say, decent as well as clean. So do you always like use the 2x or 3x size, or what is the preference? How do you do it? Or you use the same 1x size?
Great question. So yes, once you export the image out from Figma and you place it into Tableau, sometimes the backgrounds can look slightly fuzzy. And I've found this is because you're setting it to fit image size or center image. So usually when you select those two options, it blurs out the image slightly. So the way I'd go about it is keeping the dimensions the same in Figma. So don't go too large or too small. And don't select fixed center image and fixed image. So those two options in Tableau, if you can avoid them, your image will be slightly cleaner and less pixelated. I think someone else also had their hand up.
Yes.
Yeah, there's also a workaround which I figured out, that sometimes the main container which holds the image, it has, I guess, default padding. So when you set the padding to 0, it gets the same size where you configure it in Figma.
Yes, that's a very good point. So when you add an image to dashboard canvas, it will automatically add 4 pixels around the image and then 8 pixels around the fixed container or the tiled container. So like, sorry, I didn't see your name.
Yeah, it's me, Ziad.
Zayed. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So like Zayed said, if you're able to remove that additional padding, so the tiled container padding and the image padding, it should fit the dashboard canvas exactly, because the image you've created matches the dashboard already, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's a very good point.
And if you like to do automatic dashboards, you're screwed, right? Because then you can't do it anymore.
If you like doing automatic dashboards, this isn't the tutorial for you. So this only works with fixed dashboard sizes.
Do people still do automatic size? Maybe you do.
Yeah, I do for some clients when they would like to have more dashboards that can change in size, because some people have laptops, some people have these wide screens, and we tend to do tiled. Everything is tiled, but the main dashboard or the background with an image is then fixed, so it will move. But we don't do these fancy Figma dashboard or backgrounds either. So maybe then it's a bit easier.
Yeah, you're vintage, I know.
But I'm a team tile, Dennis. I'm not team floating, actually. But,
So next, we're going to go through a second example, and then hopefully we'll have time to showcase how it looks like in Tableau. So if you, in the pages on the left-hand side, if you go to the second option, which is the gradient dashboard, we're going to try and create a more dashboard-looking view. So the first one might have been a cool landing page or a home page, but this will be more of a dashboard example. So let's start with the basics again. Let's create our base. So from the bottom, we're going to select our rectangle, click anywhere on the canvas to create that square. On the right-hand side, we're going to change the width and height settings. So I'm going to change it to 1200 by 700 again. And then height 700. And you can drag it onto the view, or you can change the zoom settings to zoom to fit. So we can see our base. Next, we're going to add in our gradient. So on the right-hand pane, with the base still selected, we're going to click on the fill option. And then the second icon across lets you add a gradient. And we're going to change the stops to 3. So currently we only have 2 stops. I'm going to add a third stop by clicking on the plus. So now I have 3 gradient stops. And if you wanted to add more, you can always add additional steps. For the first stop, I'm going to click on the color tile. And then just to make it easier for you guys, I've made sure that some of the color options are already selected at the bottom. So I'm going to start with this dark black almost color and assign that to the first spot. I'm going to click on the second tile. And this time I'm going to assign the second color across, which is almost like an indigo deep blue. And for the last one, I'm going to add in a nice light blue. So the third tile from the left, no, from the right. And just like that, we've created a really cool gradient. Now, next, let's add in this almost navigation bar. So this is quite a modern looking navigation bar, very slim. To do this, we're going to use our lovely little rectangle shape again. As you can see, the rectangle shape is my favorite. Click anywhere on the canvas. So this is created our square. And I'm going to manually move this to wherever I'd like to position it and slim it down. So something like this. Now I want this rectangle to be rounded, not a clean square. So I'm going to click on that rectangle shape, and under appearance, where we have corner radius, I'm going to maybe set this to 50 So we have a nice looking pill. And I'm going to give this pill a white fill color. So under fill, click on that color tile, and I'm going to move it just to the top left. So it's set to the white hex code. Now next, let's add in these KPI boxes. So like I said, with Figma, it allows you to plan out your white space before you start building your dashboard, which is a big asset. So to create those, I'm going to click on the rectangle shape, draw out the width of roughly 1 KPI. And the cool thing about Figma is you can actually copy and paste shapes. So now that I've drawn out 1 KPI box, I can copy, paste, and just drag it next to itself. And I'm going to do that 5 times because I have 5 KPIs in this instance. So I'm going to copy the rectangle, Control C, then paste it with Control V. You can see it's added it to my layers, and I can just drag it next to itself. And don't worry if it goes over the base that you've created, because we'll fix that in a really cool way. So I'm going to add 5, and I'm not going to worry about the spacing. Yeah, it's just like Tableau. So as you can see, my KPI boxes are going way over my canvas. They're not even evenly spaced, but that's okay. So what we're going to do, yes, Prasan's already predicted it. What we're going to do in our left-hand layers panel, I'm going to select each of those rectangle shapes. So all 5 are selected. I'm going to right-click. And then in our options, we have an option, in our drop-down option, we have an option that says Add Auto Layout. So we're going to click that. And that's added even spacing between all of our KPI tiles. Now, currently they're quite spaced out. Under Auto Layout, underneath Hug, where it says 48 or whatever value it says for you on the right-hand side, we can reduce that value and push them closer together. So can you see how it's easier than manually having to adjust and go back? Great. Now it's still escaping my canvas. So what I'm going to do is within that frame and everything selected, I'm just going to, oh, okay, that didn't work. I'm going to open up my frame, select all of my rectangles. So to select your rectangles, if you hold down Shift, it'll let you select multiple at a time. Once I've selected all of my rectangles, I can push them into my canvas. So it takes up the same amount of space, and it's exactly where I want it to be positioned. And with all of those rectangles selected, I can also round them all at the same time, instead of manually having to do 1 by 1. So under Appearance, where we have Corner Radius, I can increase that slightly. And can you see how it's increasing it's rounding all of the corners at the same time. So feel free to set it to whichever value you'd like. I've set it to 18 in this case. Once again in Fill, I'm going to change the fill color to white. And I'm going to reduce the opacity so it looks a bit more cleaner, a bit more modern. So maybe to 5 in this case. And I always think when you're reducing opacity, I like having a little stroke line along with it. I think it looks a bit more modern, personal preference. So I'm going to add a stroke. I'm going to change that stroke color to white and reduce the opacity so it's not so harsh on the eyes, but just enough so it adds a little border. Great. Next, if you look at my image, I've added these little tiles just to give it a more UI UX look. So to do that, very similar process. We're only going to do one in this example since I'm very aware of time. I'm going to click on my rectangle shape, click anywhere on my canvas, reduce the size place it where I'd like it to be. Oh, that did not work. Okay, so it's added it into my frame, which I don't want it to do. The way around it, I find the frame border quite annoying. So what I like to do is I like to select my frame selection. I like to ungroup and then right click and then group it again. So right click, ungroup, right click, group again. And that removes the annoying frame selection. Oh gosh, there we go. And now I can move my So as you saw, my base just moved, and that's a really frustrating thing when you're designing backgrounds. So my advice when you're designing backgrounds, if you don't want the base to move and annoy you in that way, is you can right click on that base, and from this drop down selection, click lock/unlock. So now when I try to move my base, it won't budge. So when I'm refining the finer details of my design, I don't have to worry about the base annoying me, basically. So now with this little tile, I can move it wherever I'd like to place it. And as you guys know, you can change the corner radius. So under appearance, corner radius, I'm going to give it a slight rectangular shape. I'm also going to change the fill color to white. So under fill, drag that value up to the white hexadecimal. Is it hexadecimal? Hex code.
Hex code. Yeah.
Hex code. And then we can add a drop shadow in this case. So under effects, I can add in a drop shadow. I'm going to adjust the X coordinate so it's slightly to the right. And whenever I'm adding drop shadows, I think black is a really harsh color. I always avoid black shadows. Always pick a color that's closer to your dashboard background. So in this case, our dashboard background is blue themed. So I'm going to add a blue shadow. So a dark blue shadow will look less harsh than a black shadow. Yes, Prasan.
Shreya, because it's specific to that particular container, would you please zoom in so that others can see how the shadow is working?
Yes, of course. Can you see the shadow a bit better?
Yeah, we have people with like weak eyes as well. So
that is a very good point. But as you can see, like instead of having a black shadow, I'll show you what the black shadow is like again. Instead of having a harsh black shadow, if you're able to pick a value that's closer to the tone that you're giving your background, so in this case, a blue tone, maybe dark blue, and you can reduce the opacity slightly so it's softer on the eyes, it makes it look more natural. So black shadows, always avoid, in my opinion. I've never found a use case for a black shadow. Always go, I think if you add a slight color to it, it just brings up the design, makes it look nicer. So I'm not going to go through all of the steps for adding that tile to everything because you guys are pretty aware of that. Next, we're going to go to the bottom section and add those two boxes. So once again, use your rectangular shape. Draw out wherever you'd like it to go. I like to always, the cool thing about Figma is they'll try and align it with the other shapes that you've drawn. So that's a huge benefit of Figma, is it increases the alignment of your work. So I've created that square. I can head to the fill option and maybe select this almost transparent light blue. So instead of using transparent whites all the time, if you're able to add that color undertone to it again, it just looks more visually pleasing. And we can just copy this element, Control C, and then paste it with Control B. Instead of having to draw it from scratch, we can just adjust it as so. Now, you can also add in text and other icons. One icon plugin I really recommend using is Dash Icons by Icon Duck. And the way you do this is on the left-hand Figma panel, where you've got the Figma icon, head to the plugins option, manage plugins, And here you can search for any plugin option. So here I've got Icon Duck. I think Icon Duck is a great plugin. There's actually several Icon Duck plugins. My advice would be play around with the plugins. They can really enhance your work, and they're a quicker way of adding in those icons than manually having to download them externally and bring them in. So in this case, I'll just go for the first option, which is Open Icon Sets, and I can click Run. And now I have a wide variety of dashboard icons that I can use in my design. So if you click on one of them, you can easily bring them in. If you use this one, it should work a lot better. So dash icons. So as far as I'm aware, this one has no limit, but I was playing around with these last night quite a bit. So great alternative. Another great alternative if you want to use SVG icons is svgrepo.com. That has a huge range of SVG icons, and you can easily bring them into Figma. But the last thing we're going to do is group our selection and export, since we're running out of time. So one thing to note is once you've locked your base layer, before you export it, you have to unlock it again. Otherwise, it won't be pulled into your final image. So one way you can do it is just right-clicking on the base and clicking unlock. But the second way to do it is in your layers option, you can see which fields have been locked. So in this case, only unlock rectangle 20, ignore the other two. I just wanted to make sure you had access to the colors. So only unlock rectangle 20. Select everything on your view. Right click. Group selection. We can give it a name on the left-hand side. So I can call this dashboard background. And then I can export it as a PNG and start building in Tableau. And to quickly show you how this might look in Tableau, final bit, I promise. I'm going to connect to sample superstore data, head to a dashboard page. I'm going to change the size of my dashboard to the dimensions we were using, which was 1,200 by 700. So that's our dashboard canvas. And then using the objects on the left-hand pane, I'm going to select image, drag it onto my canvas so it highlights the entire view, drop it down, choose my image file, so this will be the dashboard background that you created. Click apply. And like that, we've brought it into Tableau. Now you'll see we still have that outer padding applied, which would make our background look quite funny. So what we can do is head to the layout pane, open up our tiled. So with the tiled container, you can see Tableau's already added a default 8 padding. So we can remove that and set that to 0. With our dashboard background, Tableau's added an automatic padding of 4. So we can remove that as well. And now our background fits on our canvas perfectly. So we don't need to do the, what are the options? We don't need to fit the image or center the image. Leave those unselected. And what you could do next is float your charts over the dashboard background. Or I like to use the Andy Kriebel method. If you're a fan of tiled containers, is grab a horizontal or a vertical container that's floating. Head to the layout pane, change the X and Y coordinates to 0, so it moves to the upper left-hand corner, and change the width and height settings to match your dashboard layout. So 1,200 by 700. And it's pretty much the same as tiling in your your containers in there or your worksheets in there. You just have to adjust the padding more than floating. So hopefully that made sense. I know we're 2 minutes over time, but last thing I'd want to say is the more you practice, the better you'll get. So what I showed you today was only a small amount of the features that Figma has to offer. You can do so much with Figma. I definitely recommend playing around with it yourself and seeing what other features you can discover. But now you know the process. So create a base, overlay the shapes, add visual interest, group and export, and then bring it into Tableau. Thank you for listening. That was it. Yeah.
Really good.
Thank you so much.
Now we are actually not data analysts anymore. We are data designers. So.
You are designers, each and every one of you.
That's my job, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I just design now.
Shreya, sorry, just a quick question for clarity.
Yeah.
Does the image go into the tiled object or the floating object?
So the image would go in the tiled object.
Right.
If you added anything else to the tile, so if I remove that floating horizontal container, if I added anything else like a blank, you can see how it shifts the image down. So that's why we want to float elements over it or have that floating container. So
you float over the top and then put everything into the floating container.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
Oh, does someone
Thank you.
has their hand raised?
Benjamin?
Yeah, Benjamin has a
Yeah, probably that was the question you answered right now, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Like you grouped the entire object to form an image. So how do I get the interactivity, or I have to create an overlay on it to be able to get, say, each I'm moving my mouse as if I have access to the image, but each boxes, how do I get that interactivity from my background? Like if I have an object to this box that you have by the right, that tiny box, if it's supposed to be a button to get an action, how do I make that happen?
So so to do that, you do all of that interactivity in Tableau. So the background that you've created is just completely static. So if you wanted to add maybe an information button, you can simply just go onto a worksheet, maybe add a min 0, change the worksheet fit to the entire view, add a shape. I should have an information button somewhere in my shapes folder. Let's see if Tableau wants to work. I need to sort out my shapes folder as well. So many old shapes. Maybe add in your information button, remove the 0 line and the worksheet background and the min 0 and obviously the axis folders. There we go. And then you can bring this in as a worksheet. So it's not going to fit there perfectly. You'd have to adjust the size, but maybe something like that. So when you hover over, you can have the tooltip interactivity. Is that what you were asking about?
You're on mute.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Can I also add, Benjamin, another option, of course, is that you can use transparent shapes as well.
Yeah.
Which means if you use a transparent shape over something which is on the underlay, then it looks like you're clicking on it, but you're not.
That's a good hack.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Steve knows.
Imagine all interactivity in Tableau, just keep the Figma as a static background. Any other questions?
Zed had raised his hand. Zed, have a question?
Yeah, I was
please
going
go.
to mention the hack which Steve just mentioned. So I usually like.
I'm just too quick for you, man. Just too quick.
No, it's-
That is a good hack.
So Shreya, like, do we have the option to export the pages in Figma locally?
So let's say you've created a workbook like I did, and you want to give someone else access to it. If you go to where it says where you have the Figma logo in the upper left corner, navigate to File. You can save it as a local copy. So this will save it as a .fig file. And just like that, you can import it into Figma or send it to someone else and they can import it into their Figma by the process we did at the beginning.
So they will have access to the like a whole project or a specific page?
They'll have access to everything. So all of the pages you've created, they'll be able to access all of them.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries.
Is there a limit to export these pages for free version?
Not that I'm aware of. So like I said, you can only have, with the free version, you can only have a max of 3 pages per design file. So you can have unlimited design files, just max 3 pages. So if you're exporting them out, the max you can have is 3 pages.
Yeah. Funny thing about Figma is when they didn't have this paid model, and before that, if you were using, and like, let's say I have 20 or 30 pages, they still work.
Oh, no way. You just
I
have
just-
to save.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't think we have any more questions. So thank you so much, Shreya, for sharing your knowledge with us and chiming in and also showing us how we can actually build the layout from the scratch. And I'm sure all of our mentees, as well as mentors, would take benefit from this and build something cool soon. Don't forget to tag Shreya if you are going to do a recent dashboard and you're going to apply this whole concept of bringing design into Tableau, actually. So it's really cool and it will enhance your work. Though at work, it can be sometimes tricky, but still, you can do it. You can have all the things as styled and just float over it. It's a bit of work, but yes, it looks good.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I got some inspiration now, and since we also had Dennis here, if you check the chat now, hopefully we see you all at the next Data Plus Maps user group coming up in 21st of May. So do some promoting here.
Did you get my approval to promote this?
I can't. I think you're muted, so I don't know.
No, that's just your hearing cut.
Okay,
Thanks,
so
Shreya. That was brilliant. Really enjoyed that.
thank you so much
Likewise.
again. I'll just stop the recording and then we can be ourselves.
And have a
Thank you.
fantastic weekend.